Hello students and welcome to BA 131 Module 9. As you can see here we have the sequence for the module. We have the introduction. This is Government Translation Interpretation, Part 2. We have the study guide for quiz number 2. We'll go over that briefly in just a moment. We have the video lecture and the discussion. And here is the correction key for the asylum interview questions. And I'll tell you how to do that in a moment, and the summary for Module 9. Let's go to the PowerPoint. All right, the Module 9 PowerPoint, Government Translations and Review for Quiz 2. This week we're looking at business and social media key points, government translation key points, and the discussion for this module. And we have the Quiz 2 study guide and the due dates. This is a review on the things that we did last week, at the last module. Why is it important to learn how to translate and use technical or business terms? Remember that no matter what field you start working with, whether it's in education, legal field, medical, business, technology, etc., you'll find that nowadays computers and social media terms will come up in everyday language, and you need to know about that. And ask yourself how you would translate download, flash memory or flash drive, keyboard, homepage, link. It's important to know these terms, of course, in English, but also how to render them into Spanish. So do your research. We have many of the glossaries and terms in the module, and you can also find some online by doing a simple search for Spanish and English terms. And here are a couple of links to use for social media and computer terms. These are some of the ones that we talked about last week. And we reviewed this in the module last week. How do we translate, and when do we translate, and when do we leave things in English? Depending on who you're translating for, if you're working for a company, make sure that you review the company's translation policy. Do you translate certain terms or not in that company? And one thing that you should know is that you usually do not translate universally adopted words like Facebook, and know when to use usted versus the to format, the formal versus the informal format or formal address. And know that social media and computer and business terms are often used in everyday language in its English form. And something for you to remember, read this article here. One of the key takeaways from the article is that which word you use may depend on the region and the preference of the individual speaker. And there also may be alternatives or different spellings. For the most part, imported English words related to technology tend to keep the English pronunciation or something approximating it. Now, how to avoid being in a situation where you do not know a term and what to do if you get stuck. It happens, so how do you avoid it? First, you try to familiarize yourself with the content and the topic that you will be discussing before the meeting takes place. Ask for the documents that will be used before the meeting so that you are prepared ahead of time. And as you review that, study unfamiliar words. If you need to, use reference materials, the style guides of the company or the organization, the glossaries, terminology databases, and most importantly, do not guess. If you do not know the term at the time of the meeting, you can ask for clarification to use words that are approximate to the original word use. Because remember that we interpret meaning, not the words themselves without context. The quiz coming up includes the use of official names of government agencies. We have the study guide here for quiz 2 that has this list of government agencies that you will be tested on. And this is in the introduction, so we'll go there and I'll show you that. Now, you may have heard of this word, false cognates, falsos amigos. What are false cognates? Well, to understand that, let's look at the repeated words in these different sentences. Notice the word refresh in sentence number 1 and number 2? Would you say it the same in Spanish? I need to refresh my memory so I can tell my mom where I parked my car. How would you say that in Spanish? Next one. How do I refresh this page so I can download the song? Would you use the same word for refresh? See, these words are false cognates. It's not the same word because it does not have the same meaning. Number 3. I was very excited to go to my son's graduation. How would you say that? Would you use estaba muy excitado de ir a la graduación de mi hijo? There's a different word. Excited is not excitado. This is something I hear a lot. Let's introduce ourselves to the class. Some people might say, erroneously, vamos a introducirnos a la clase. That's not the meaning of let's introduce ourselves. Number 5, Dr. Patterson is the principal of the school. No es el principal o la principal, right? Es el director o la directora. I like to attend my yoga class every Wednesday evening. The false cognate there is attend. No es atender, es asistir. The student has accommodations in the classroom. My first period class is theater arts. Actually, I do not know if this is a false cognate sentence. Actually is not actualmente. I have to exit the building from the south side to avoid the construction. I had to presume he was innocent based on the evidence from the court. You would not use the word presumir because that means something else. I have to press my pants before I go to my job interview. You have to press that button in order to open the door. The press is always featuring stories of Kim Kardashian. Will you use the same Spanish word for these 3 press, 12, 13, and 14? No, you will use a different word. So these are false cognates. False cognates are words in one language which are identical or very similar words in a second language, but whose meanings are different. From the examples above, excited does not mean excitado. Embarrassed does not mean embarazado. So these are false cognates. The words look similar, but they do not mean the same. So how to avoid using false cognates? It's important to read a lot. Just read as much as you can. The more you read in the language you are not so familiar with, the better you will be in learning how words are used and how to appropriately use them. And you can start making a list of false cognates as you encounter them if you're not familiar and you want to study them. And you can use flashcards that are already created, such as the ones in this Quizlet flashcards. Now you're going to review homework number 3, the asylum interview questions. We don't need to go over this because we covered it last week, but I'll show you how to do that when we get back to the module itself. Make sure that when you translated those questions, you use the formal usted format. Make sure you translated it something similar to this. Have you ever been physically harmed in your home country? Ha sido maltratado físicamente en su país de nacimiento. Notice that it is not a direct translation. No es en su país hogar, right? Home country. You would use a different phrase, país de nacimiento. And the same thing with the examples over here. Notice the last one. Do you have family back home in your home country? Tiene familia en su país de origen. Right? Even though it's the same home country, you can say it in a different way, país de origen. And we have the discussion. We'll go over that in the module, but you know your post is due on Friday and your replies to 2 of your classmates are due on Sunday. And in order to obtain full points, you need to meet both deadlines. And we have the study guide that is in Module 9. I'll show you that when we get back to the module. And when you turn in your assignments in Word, remember to use this format. It might be cut off here for you, but this is your first name dash your last name dash homework 09 for Module 9, etc. And we have the due dates. Know that quiz number 2 will be available in Module 10. So let's go back to the module. In the introduction, these are the assignments for this week. And even though this will open Monday, week 9 starts the week after spring break. But if you're watching this now, you realize that I opened week 9 a week early. In case people want to work through the spring break, you can do that and get ahead. So here are the government websites and other resources. And here's the U.S. Department of State, information for contractor freelance translators, information for U.S. linguistics. So you can check out the application from the U.S. Department of State. Here's a sample application. And we have these from last week. Some of the Spanish language government websites are right here with the explanations as we covered last week. Now take a look at this blooper here. The important thing here is that you need to remember to work within your capabilities. This is from a Facebook group. It's called Things Translators Never Say. It's a humorous view on the life of a translator and anecdotes of what happens. And even though it's meant to be in jest and in fun, we can learn a lot from that. The story here: the court summoned me to interpret from and into Spanish today. I arrive in time, I wait until it's my turn, and I introduce myself to the suspect. His response: Madame, je ne parle pas l'espagnol. I explained to both the judge and the suspect that they asked for an interpreter in the wrong language. And while I know some French, I did not feel equipped to interpret a court hearing into French, nor have I been sworn in for this language combination. However, the judge heard me explain the affair to the suspect and said, "Your French sounds fine. Why don't you stay and interpret into French instead?" So the name of this group is TTNS, and that's how they abbreviate things that we think but we do not say, right? But this is TINS, things interpreters never say. So what this person thought was, "Are you out of your bleeping mind?" Of course, she didn't say that to the judge. And then sometimes there's a comment like, "Oh, this is what I actually said. Things interpreters do say. I'm flattered, but I don't think my French will do. Good luck finding an interpreter." So this happens sometimes. Even judges think that just because a person speaks 2 languages, they can be interpreters. And you need to remember to, as it says up here, work within your capabilities. Here's the study guide for quiz 2. It's in Word format and PDF format. So you can open it or download it and review it so that you know what questions will be asked. And also review the flashcards here, which will be part of the quiz. And quiz number 2 is going to be available in Module 10. And remember that you don't have to wait until the end of the module to take the quiz. You have the study guide. You can review it, and once the module opens, you can get that done as early as that Monday and have it completed. The video lecture will be here, and here is the PowerPoint for the video lecture. The discussion is here. This is from the U.S. Department of State Office of Language Services, LS, Translating Division. You're going to review this document, which is here. The questions are here, so you can use these here instead of opening the document. And you're going to select 2 questions that you would like to comment on and answer these questions and number them as such. So you're going to write, number 1, what are the 2 questions you selected? Number 2, how do these questions apply to you? And number 3, is there something that stood out from the questions that you selected? Even if you're just starting your career as a translator-interpreter Answer the 2 questions you selected to the best of your ability based on your current proficiency level. For example, if you're still in high school or just starting your career, you can comment on your knowledge of the Microsoft Office software. That's one of the questions here. So review the questions here and choose 2. And you have the due dates here: Friday for your initial comment, Sunday you reply to at least 2 of your classmates. And here's the correction key for the asylum questions. This is for you to review. And of course, there's more than one way to translate. This is a good example of translation. So just compare your answers to this one right here. And finally, here's a summary of Module 9. All right, if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, have a wonderful week.